We're recording.
Yeah, very good. All right, thanks everybody for coming. This is just going to probably be half an hour or so. Me just talking a little about the course that you all have signed up to do next week. So today, nothing really will happen except me talking a little bit about how we get there and what we will do then, and a little bit about getting ready. So this year we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think it's 7. It says 8, but I think it's 7. We have five of the GMT developers, me, myself, Joachim, Dong, Max, and Federico is going to be participating. We have one of the GMT star developers, Eric Zhu, who's going to help us out on the Geodesy section. And then we have a student, Liliane Burkhardt from University of Hawaii, who's going to help us in the breakout rooms. So that's the team that you've hired. Before we go on, I want to point out that all of these UNAVCO sponsored courses are following the code of conduct. So here's the link to that code. You should check it out at least once if you haven't already. There's nothing new or strange there. It's basically be nice to everybody else and, be polite. Don't call people out bad names, all that stuff. Basically, basic normal human behavior, or desired human behavior is to say. It's not always normal. So that's, we're going to all strive towards that. There's just a little bit of background about these workshops. We had them for many years. They used to be physical in a classroom at Scripps. So that limited the number of people to about 25, 30. So because of COVID, of course, we all went online. We typically had something between 150 and 200 participants in these courses. So that's a huge increase in load. And since this is a hands-on course, it's difficult to please everybody. So we come up with a scheme where we split the participants into 2 different tiers. So tier 1 are students and members of UNAVCO member institutions. And this year, that's about half, 66 or so. And then tier 2 are everybody else. So we do this so that it's manageable. So both of the tiers will attend the lectures, but only tier 1 will be in the breakout sessions and have Slack access. Tier 2 can contribute questions through the GitHub page, which I'll talk about. As always, all these Zoom lectures will be recorded and be available on the UNAVCO website. So you can always look at it later. If your schedule changes and you can't make one of the sessions, you can always catch up by looking at one of the videos. All right, so as I said, it's mostly me talking about the workshop, which is all online, of course. This session here right now is being recorded as well. So if you or someone else that you know taking it are not here, or you're here, you can go back and watch this again as soon as it gets posted. We had some technical issues this morning. The first version of this introduction got botched because we couldn't connect to Zoom through the UNAVCO account because I was outside the country. So Zoom said, no, you can't do that. So we had only people who I could contact on tier 1 Slack that was notified of this, and everyone else got lost until they got emailed much later. So today we're not doing anything GMT related, installations or exercises. This is something that you're going to be doing by yourself, as I will talk about. If you have any specific questions as this moves along, you can put them in the chat tool. I'm not sure if there are any other GMT developers online tonight. It's hard for me to answer chats and talk at the same time, but I'll try to get to it towards the end if there's still questions in the chat.
I'm here, Paul.
Oh, you're here. Hey, look at that, Joachim. So you can monitor chat and
Yeah, but I'm an iPad. I try to see where is the chat. Okay, continue.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so we had 2 of these introduction sections. One this morning at 0800 UTC that was meant to service folks, early hours in Europe and back east, basically, or talk is much later. That was slightly botched, so some of you might be watching this one or watching it on the tape delay tomorrow. So this session right now at 2000 UTC is meant to service Americas mostly, and also people who stay up late in Europe. The reason we're doing it this way is that we have participants from over 20 time zones. So that's, it's almost all the way around the planet. That makes it clear that we can't possibly pick any one time where this workshop will satisfy everybody. So the time zone that we picked, which is on the webpage, and I'll talk about in a minute, mostly fits the instructors, right? Because if it's a question of you or me getting up 5 a.m. to do a class, it's going to be you, because I'm the instructor, so I can dictate that stuff. So, but we're recording everything, right? So if you have an awkward time zone where you even have to stay up really late or get up early, you can sleep in and just watch the recordings, but you miss the live action, of course. All right, so GMT, there's a lot of GMT versions. We just released 6.4 a week or so ago, 10 days ago. We want to use 6.4 for this workshop, and we're going to use GMT modern mode exclusively. We'll talk about how to install 6.4, give you specific instructions, and there's some homework for you to complete, which basically tells us, if you complete it successfully, it tells us and you that you have successfully installed GMT 6.4. This is important that you take this seriously and do this before next week, because there'll be zero time during the workshop itself to do any installations. If you have trouble installing, you'll contact us through the GitHub course page, make an issue there and explain what the problems are, so we can sort of keep track of things rather than emails and so on. You can also ping us on Slack, but for these kinds of technical things, we might need to see what the output is on your end. It's best to use issue on GitHub. All right, the scripting itself for this course is going to be entirely in Bash shell. If you have worked in the past using, say, C shell or TC shell or something, you'll simply have to adapt a little bit. We're not going to do anything very shell specific, any crazy things in the shell. So it should be easy to just almost type things verbatim. The only thing that might be different is setting a variable, which, slightly different syntax. But if you know your script language, that should not be any problem. We will work this way. We will together and individually write scripts into an editor. We'll make these scripts executable, and then we'll run them in a terminal. That way we have a record of what we're doing and we can share easily. There will be some data files that we're going to be using. They will be accessed as remote files, which is the GMT feature where we put files on the server, and we can write scripts that accesses those files without you having to download manually. There are some larger files that we may need to use. These are Earth relief files. And depending on your bandwidth, it might be worth downloading some of them before the course, so you don't sit there and wait for some slow download, dial-up modems, etc. Right, so the basic tools you need other than GMT is going to be a terminal window, and that terminal window should be capable of running Bash now. So this exists for all the platforms, Linux, Windows, Mac. We require you to have a text editor. You probably already have a text editor, that's your favorite. We're going to recommend Visual Studio Code for this workshop, and we're going to be, the instructor will be using Visual Studio Code. And that exists for all operating systems, so it's a pretty useful tool that's cross-platform, but you don't have to. I mean, if you're already happy with what you're using, you should use what you're using. If you need a web browser, of course, we're going to deal with the GMT documentation, which is on the web page, and consult it from time to time to see what options are and how we use them. And there might be some Google Docs folder that we fill some comment into. So need a browser and an editor, terminal, and GMT itself. All right, so this year we are running the workshop over 3 days. It has been 2 days so far, but we're going to do 3 days to give ourselves a little bit more time to work on the projects with you. So it starts next Tuesday, July 5th, and it completes on Thursday, July 7th. Each of those 3 days have 2 sections, and there's a 1-hour break between them, which you can use for, depending on your time zone, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, nap. So the first section is an hour and a half, 90 minutes. That starts 2:30 UTC time or GMT time. And then we go on for 90 minutes and have an hour break. And then we get back at it at 5 o'clock UTC or GMT time. And we have another 2.5 hours. And that's each of the 3 days. just triple check or double check, depending on your confidence level, that you quite understand what time you are versus relative to UTC. Every year we have someone who is an hour early, which is okay, and an hour late, which is not so great. Here's the sort of basic layout of the first 2 days. So you can see we break things up with some 10-minute breaks here and there, in addition to the long hour break. We will assume you know very little. I'm sure most of you know quite a bit, but we have to assume that you don't know too much about Unix operating system and Bash scripting. So we'll go over the basics in a sort of rushed way there, 25 minutes. And then we'll do some basic GMT exercises, making some base maps and coastline plots, that sort of thing. Just get a sense for how GMT works, basically. Once you have that under your belt, the rest is just extending it into other data sets and applications. But the key thing is sort of being picked up in that first sections, the 2 basic sessions. And then we're going to talk about how you plot things like symbols and lines and polygons, that sort of thing, maybe text. And then we'll move into how do we make maps, including grids and images, contour maps, color maps, shaded relief, that sort of thing. And that wraps up the first day. So full plate, basically, covering a lot of stuff. But we have, about 3.5 hour actual time there. The next day, we're moving into the more geodesy, seismology specific topics. So these are things that involve supplements to GMT that are more discipline specific. As you know, the G in GMT stands for generic. So these are across all sciences kind of things that everybody needs. And then very specific disciplines like seismology, geodesy, potential fields, that sort of thing is put into supplements. And we will exercise a couple of supplements on the second day, which will be the SEIS package and the geodesy package. So we'll go through those. You can see the long sections for those. And then we end up with some introductions to animations, how to make movies with GMT. This can be movies of anything that we've talked about so far in those 2 days. The sections that are listed here, these are not lectures. There's some lecturing in the beginning to set things up. We have to go over some common terminology and set up issues, and then we're going to work on problems, small problem sets, and together, sort of little demos, and then we break up into breakout rooms to tackle a slightly more advanced thing on that topic. And that means you have smaller groups that gets together. There will be one instructor in each of these breakout rooms, so you get much quicker one-on-one there. Throughout it all, you can post questions on Slack, and yeah, preferably in Slack. We think it's better than the chat box, but you can do that too. The third day, we made half-wit optional. So we start off by working on the class projects. So the class project is basically you designing a script that makes a pretty nice publication quality illustration that might be a figure in your thesis or a paper that should be tailored to what you are working on. So it's something that's valuable to put some effort into. And once that is submitted, that doesn't have to be the same day, we will get full credit for having completed that course. So that's how we check you off the list, basically. Then after the long break, we're gonna go through and give some demonstrations of the 3 wrappers to GMT. So wrappers to GMT are other computational environments from which you can access GMT. There are currently 3. One is an interface into MATLAB. So that means you're working in MATLAB and you want to access GMT from within MATLAB scripts. Then there is PyGMT, which is for people who use Python and Python and notebooks, Jupyter notebooks. And the last one, the same, but it's in Julia. So we'll have a demo of how Julia can be used to access GMT. And we have a break, and then if you are still with us, we can work more on the project and get some help. And eventually we wrap up. So, but anytime during this orange section here, if your schedule is such that you really can't hang anymore with us, you're welcome to leave. You just need to submit your final illustration and script to us through Slack. All right. So each of these sessions is going to be very similar. We're going to try to minimize lecturing, although we do love the sound of our voices. So we do lecture, but then we're going to maximize hands-on practices. We'll give a brief overview, as I said, of what we're up against in this particular section. And then we'll go through some simple examples and do that together. And then we'll talk about a more complicated session. And the project is, as I said, to make a desired illustration that is more meaningful. I think I said all these things already with the breakout rooms. All right, here's the GMT webpage. If you've never been there, you should make a bookmark, www.genericmappingtools.org. It has access to everything GMT. There's a download button that takes you to how to download GMT. It's especially useful for, well, for anybody actually, but especially Windows and Mac OS users who prefer to just click on an installer. Linux will have to probably install GMT from either the tarball from the download site or do it through GitHub. Your repo, your Linux repo distro probably doesn't have GMT 6.4 yet. They tend to be some time behind, so it's kind of frustrating if you're Linux and you want to have the latest GMT. You're gonna have to roll it yourself. We are gonna click on the documentation button during the course and look at man pages for individual modules to see how they actually, what the options are and how you pass correct options. There's a forum. We're not going to use the forum during the workshop, but this is something that you should consider your job, and that is to, if you're not already, sign up, get an account on the forum so you can contribute questions and problems to us, but also help other users like yourself solve simple problems. So we're all in this together. We're one giant worldwide GMT community. Everybody has to play a little part. You don't have to be coding GMT to help. You can just point out problematic, description in a man page that you don't understand, or ask, how do you do so-and-so, or answer someone else's questions about how you do so-and-so. Because once you go through this class, you know the basics and you can help newbies to solve their problems. There's the GitHub link that takes us to the where all the repos for GMT. There are probably 30, 40 of them now. In addition to the key GMT1, which is the source code for GMT, you'll find one called GMT for Geodesy, which is the one that we're going to use for the course. And there's a YouTube channel as well. This is where we put most of our recordings from our community meetings, as well as animations that we use as examples in GMT, how to make movies. All right, things for you to check off basically before we come next week. Got to make sure that your GMT 6.4 installation is complete. So last week you got email from Melissa that had the link to the GitHub repo for the course. Maybe Joachim, if you're able to copy paste, could you paste that link to the GitHub repo in the chat? If not, I can do it later. I know you're on iPad. The GitHub site will have instructions for what to do. There's an installation page that will walk you through how to install GMT. And there's a homework one, which will task you to run a couple of scripts. So you don't have to do any coding. It's basically copy and paste, run some scripts. But if those two scripts produces the same plots and animation that is on the GitHub site, that is your assurance that your system is up and running and that you have correctly installed 6.4. If between now and next week, life changes and you aren't able to come to any of the days or something like that, you should let us know or let Melissa know, because if some people in the tier 1 can't come, we might move up some from tier 2 to make better use of everyone's time. As I mentioned, please consider register for GMT forum. Once this course is over, the course is over. And if you have questions about GMT usage after that, the forum is a great place to do this. You do need to register with GitHub to be able to post on the various sites. One of the things that we ask people who take these courses is to try to be good citizens after you left this course. So if you find a problem in GMT or a bug even, or a confusing man page or something, post a bug report or an issue or a feature request on the GitHub site. Almost 90% of the things that you see GMT is capable of has come from requests from people who needed to solve a particular problem. And we have listened to what people want in addition to what we personally need, and added lots of features that makes GMT very powerful over 3 decades. So we depend on inspiration and thoughts and comments from the users. So that's that's a low bar for you to clear. Just be active and help us make things better. And of course, make sure you've accepted the Slack invitation before the workshop starts, because we're going to use that one to communicate. All right, so that's really all we're going to do today. It's pretty quick and sweet. As I said, make sure you go to the GMT for Geodesy GitHub page. If you lost the email, just Google GMT GitHub, look at all the repos, find the one that says GMT for Geodesy, and read the installation instructions there and the homework. It should be all self-explanatory. If you run into any trouble, you can add an issue to the Git page, right? You just post an issue and explain what you've done, what the errors are, what's not working, and then one of us will respond. That's how we keep in track. Do this as soon as you can. Don't wait until Monday night, because we may be sleeping or we might have other things to do on Monday. So, and on Tuesday it's too late because we're going to be busy giving the workshop. So that's all I got. I hope to see you all on Tuesday next week. We have a great lineup this year again, and we look forward to spending some time with you. So thanks for listening. Did you get any critical questions, Joachim?
No.
No. Someone
and I passed it. Well, not just someone wanted to use a 6.0 from
6.0. That's very old.
Said, probably not. That's very old. Probably not.
Yeah, I think
it was
probably
the
not.
first.
Yeah.
Now, for example, that will not work with Julia if they want to.
Yeah.
Julia requires 6.1.
Yeah, and it won't run with animations either, because there won't be an animation.
Yeah, the animation. There will be a lot of things that we don't remember anymore. So, well, I posted the link. Now I remember which link you wanted, but I don't know if I just reply to that guy that asked it the version. Okay. This is confusing. Well, I can do it with. I have to practice more. I can do it the same thing from the iPad, but
yeah, I can do it for you.
I did reply, but I do not know if it was to everybody. No, I may have to select
with a mouse there.
Everyone. Yeah, I need to select everyone. Yeah, I just now I will.
All right, there we doubled up.
I just replied to him. Yeah.
So everybody just go to that page and sort of read and follow along. Read the install page, the README, and you can't go wrong. I mean, given that we had 150, 160 people last year, almost 200 the year before, we only had a tiny number of people who had trouble. And, there's always something with someone's computer. Watch out if you have an old GMT version. There can be some conflicts if you don't clean that out or you set your environment so that you can separate the two. Those are usually the only problems we had there. All right. Guys are ready to go. So rock and roll next Tuesday. And we'll have some fun together and make some cool plots. So until then, I'll see you on GitHub. Just post stuff there as you need to. So see you next week, guys. Thanks for coming. And you can stop. Jamie, you're welcome.